Chapter 4. Divine Fury.
The miracle tasted like vindication. I knelt beside Tommy Crane's bed, checking his pulse while his mother wept tears that caught the morning light streaming through our patched windows. Where gray skin had stretched over jutting bones just yesterday, healthy pink now bloomed across his cheeks. The boy's eyes tracked my movement with the bright curiosity of childhood restored.
"Mama, I'm hungry,"
he whispered, his voice carrying strength that had been absent for weeks.
Sarah Crane's sob broke something loose in my chest. She pressed her face against her son's small hand, shoulders shaking with relief that bordered on hysteria. Around us, the settlement's common hall buzzed with similar scenes. Parents held children who should have been corpses, voices raised in prayers and grateful weeping. The golden apples had worked. I moved between the makeshift beds like a physician making rounds, but my hands trembled as I checked each miraculous recovery. Little Maria Santos sat up to braid her younger sister's hair. The Fletcher twins argued over who got the last piece of bread. Every child touched by the plague now thrived with renewed vitality, yet dread coiled in my stomach like a serpent feeding on itself.
"Vera."
Elder Morrison's weathered hand fell on my shoulder, his roomy eyes bright with something approaching awe.
"The children, they're all
Healed. The word felt heavy on my tongue. Every single one.
praise be.
He breathed.
The old stories were true after all. Golden fruit from the divine realm, capable of curing any ailment.
His voice dropped to a reverent whisper.
You've brought us a miracle."
I pulled away from his touch, my skin crawling with the weight of unearned praise. The miracle belonged to whatever force had grown those impossible apples in an alien grove, not to the desperate woman who'd stolen them. But Morrison's expression held the fervent gratitude of someone whose grandchildren had been dying just hours ago.
"The council owes you an apology.
He continued.
We should have trusted your judgment, should have."
The council was right to be cautious. My voice came out sharper than intended. What I did was reckless, dangerous. I violated divine territory and stole from... The words stuck in my throat as I caught sight of the single remaining apple nestled in its cloth wrapping. Its golden surface pulsed with contained warmth, and I fought the urge to clutch it protectively against my chest. From what? A god whose domain I'd trespassed, whose property I'd claimed without permission.
"Reckless or not, you saved them."
Morrison's gruff voice carried the weight of absolute conviction.
When the rest of us were content to accept God's will, you acted. That takes courage.
Courage. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Desperate parents didn't act from courage. They acted from the inability to watch their children fade into nothing. But I nodded anyway, accepting praise I didn't deserve while terror gnawed at my composure like acid. The Worldbreaker would come. Gods didn't forgive theft. I excused myself and slipped outside, needing air that didn't carry the scent of grateful tears and impossible recoveries. Dawn painted the settlement's ramshackle buildings in shades of gold and amber, the same colors that had danced across alien fruit in a grove that shouldn't exist. My boots crunched on frost-hardened earth as I walked the perimeter, trying to calm nerves that felt stretched to breaking. The mountains rose like broken teeth against the lightening sky. Somewhere beyond those peaks lay the divine glade, probably swarming with whatever forces served the being I'd robbed. My hands clenched into fists as I imagined divine retribution descending on innocent families who'd done nothing but accept stolen miracles. What have I done? A child's laughter drifted from the common hall. Maria Santos giggling at something her sister whispered. The sound should have brought comfort. Instead, it twisted the knife of guilt deeper into my chest. Those children lived because of my theft, but their lives might be forfeit when divine justice arrived to collect payment.
"Vera."
Jonas's voice carried worry as he approached, his artist's eyes taking in whatever expression I wore.
"You look like you've seen ghosts."
Maybe I have. I turned to face my youngest brother, noting how his face had filled out slightly since we'd joined the settlement. 19 years old and still prone to melancholy, but the community's relative stability had been good for him. How are the others?
Father's working on the water filtration system. Sober for once.
Jonas's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile.
Lydia's holding court with the unmarried men, naturally. And Samuel.
His expression darkened.
Samuel's been asking questions about where you went yesterday.
My stomach clenched. What kind of questions?
The kind that suggests he knows more than he should.
Jonas stepped closer, lowering his voice.
He cornered me this morning, wanting to know about divine glades and golden fruit. Said he'd heard rumors.
Damn. Samuel's curiosity had always been a liability, but now it could prove catastrophic. At 16, my youngest brother combined adolescent recklessness with a stubborn refusal to accept authority. If he started spreading stories about stolen divine artifacts, where is he now?
That's what worries me.
Jonas rubbed his arms against the morning chill.
He left before sunrise with his pack. Wouldn't say where he was going.
Ice settled in my veins. Samuel was impulsive, prideful, and convinced he could handle anything the world threw at him. The combination had nearly gotten him killed twice since we'd joined the settlement. But if he'd gone looking for the divine glade, a sound like distant thunder rolled across the settlement. I froze, every instinct screaming warnings as the rumble grew louder. Not thunder, something else. Something that made the hair on my arms stand upright and sent primitive fear clawing up my spine. Jonas grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to leave bruises.
What is that?
The howl that answered his question came from no earthly throat. It rose from the mountains like the sound of wind through broken stone, but underneath lay something that spoke to the hindbrain's oldest fears. Predator calls that had stalked human nightmares since we'd first learned to huddle around fires. My knees nearly buckled as the cry echoed off settlement walls, and I watched Jonas go pale as understanding crashed over both of us. "They're coming! Get inside!" I snapped, pushing him toward the common hall. "Tell everyone to lock their doors and stay quiet. Now!"
Vera, what?
"Go!" The command cracked like a whip, and Jonas stumbled backward before turning to run. I stood alone in the settlement's center, watching shapes flow down the mountainside like liquid shadow given hunger and purpose. Lycanthropes. The word whispered itself through my memory, dredged up from half-remembered legends and scavenger tales. 8 feet of lanky predator moving with gaits that belonged to no earthly creature. They loped down the slopes with a gorilla-like shamble that somehow covered impossible distances, their dark forms shifting and flowing like smoke given malevolent intent. Behind me, the settlement erupted into chaos. Doors slammed as families barricaded themselves inside flimsy buildings that would offer no protection against divine servants. Children's cries rose and fell like wind through broken glass, while adult voices shouted contradictory orders that no one followed. The lycanthropes reached the valley floor and spread out in a perfect circle around our perimeter. Intelligent, coordinated, hunting. My hands shook as I counted them. 12 that I could see, probably more hidden in the scrubland beyond. They moved with the fluid coordination of pack predators, their alien intelligence calculating weak points and escape routes with methodical precision. One raised its elongated skull toward the sky and released another of those bone-chilling howls. They're announcing their presence. Why? The answer came with a crack of displaced air that made my teeth ache. Lightning split the dawn sky without warning, divine electricity arcing between clear heavens and frost-hardened earth. The bolt struck the ground 20 yards from where I stood, and from its blazing impact stepped a figure that belonged in mankind's darkest myths. 7 feet of scarred divinity wrapped in armor that seemed to drink the morning light. Theron the Stormbringer materialized like nightmare-given form, electrical discharge playing around features that looked carved from stone and shaped by violence. His silver eyes swept the settlement with calculating assessment before fixing on me with an intensity that made my vision blur. "Oh God, oh God, oh God."
Territorial dispute,
he declared, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself shiver.
The words meant nothing to me, but their effect on the lycanthropes was immediate. The creatures froze in their circling advance, elongated skulls turning toward the Stormbringer with expressions I couldn't read. Whatever communication passed between Divine Lord and monstrous servants occurred in frequencies beyond human perception. Theron stepped forward, lightning crackling between his fingers like contained fury.
These mortals fall under my protection, Worldbreaker. Your hounds have no claim here.
Worldbreaker? The temperature dropped 10 degrees in the space of a heartbeat. Frost crystallized on the settlement's windows while something vast and terrible pressed against the edge of perception. The lycanthropes lowered themselves into hunting crouches, and I felt the weight of invisible eyes studying our ramshackle buildings with predatory interest. Another crack of displaced air, another divine arrival. No, please no! The figure that emerged from shadow and folded space stood even taller than Theron, his massive frame wrapped in armor that seemed forged from starlight and contained violence. Kaelan Grimfang, the Worldbreaker himself, stepped into our settlement's center like death personified. His amber eyes swept across the common hall where children's voices still echoed, then fixed on me with an intensity that made breathing impossible.
Stormbringer.
The single word carried enough menace to level mountains.
These mortals violated my domain, stole from my private cultivation. The offense demands response.
He knows, oh God, he knows it was me. Theron's silver eyes flicked toward me, taking in my terror with calculating interest.
Mortals act from desperation, not malice. Surely the great Worldbreaker doesn't concern himself with such minor infractions.
Minor?
Kaelan's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than a roar.
4 centuries of research. Specimens cultivated across dozens of worlds. Breeding programs that could reshape the cosmic hierarchy itself.
His gaze never left my face.
She stole from the one grove where I'd achieved viable hybrid stock.
The Stormbringer laughed, the sound like breaking glass mixed with distant thunder.
How fascinating. The brutal Worldbreaker, reduced to playing gardener in his private sanctuary. Tell me, does the Seraph know about your little agricultural experiments?
Something shifted in the quality of silence. The lycanthropes went absolutely still, while Kaelan's scarred features hardened into an expression that spoke of violence barely contained. Whatever Theron had just implied carried weight that transcended our small territorial dispute.
Careful, Stormbringer.
Kaelan's hand moved to rest on a weapon I couldn't clearly see.
Some words carry prices beyond your ability to pay.
Do they?
Theron's smile held cruel satisfaction.
I wonder what our cosmic overlords would think about this.
From within his armor, he produced one of the golden apples. My stolen apples. He bounced it casually in his palm like a child's toy. The fruit caught the morning light, its surface gleaming with that otherworldly luminescence that spoke of power beyond mortal comprehension. He gestured toward me with casual dismissal.
This little mortal may have done us all a favor. She certainly has done one for me.
What favor? What does he know that I don't? The words flew past my comprehension, but their effect on both gods was unmistakable. Divine tension crackled between them like visible electricity, and I caught glimpses of political undercurrents that spanned cosmic distances. Whatever I'd stolen from the divine glade, it was more significant than simple healing fruit.
The mortal is mine.
Kaelan said flatly.
She will answer for her theft.
Under what authority?
Theron's lightning began building again, divine power coiling around his frame like a living thing.
This territory falls within my patrol zone. These mortals accept my protection.
His silver eyes found mine across the growing electrical discharge.
Though I admit, this particular specimen shows interesting capabilities.
Specimen. They're talking about me like livestock. Fear gave way to fury that burned hot and clean in my chest. These cosmic beings stood in my settlement, debating my fate while children cowered behind flimsy walls and parents prayed to gods who viewed them as renewable resources. The casual dismissal in their voices, the way they discussed human lives like trade goods, it crystallized every bitter lesson I'd learned about divine nature over 20 years of subsistence living. I am not property, I snarled, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. Both gods turned toward me with expressions that ranged from amused interest to naked hostility. Kaelan's amber eyes held depths of controlled fury that spoke of violence refined across multiple lifetimes.
You are a thief.
He said softly.
Nothing more, nothing less.
I saved children. The words came out steadier than I felt. While you hoarded medicine that could have prevented their suffering, I acted. If that makes me a thief, I accept the title.
Theron's laughter rang across the settlement like breaking bells.
Oh, this is delicious. The little mortal shows defiance.
His silver eyes glittered with malicious appreciation.
Tell me, brave thief, do you understand what you've actually stolen?
I lifted my chin, refusing to show the terror that threatened to buckle my knees. Golden apples that cure disease. Fruit that grows in impossible places through power I don't comprehend.
Cure disease.
Kaelan's voice held bitter amusement.
Such a limited perspective.
His massive frame stepped closer, radiating menace that made the air thick as syrup.
You didn't just steal fruit, little mortal. You destroyed 4 centuries of careful research.
4 centuries? The number staggered me. Whatever those golden apples truly were, they represented far more than simple healing fruit. But his tone brooked no questions, no explanations. Only the promise of punishment for crimes I barely understood. The children live, I repeated, fighting to keep my voice steady. Whatever your research was meant to accomplish, it wasn't helping the mortals dying in settlements across this territory.
Mortals die.
Theron observed with casual cruelty.
That's what mortals do, but gods.
His lightning flickered with anticipation.
Gods endure. And sometimes that endurance requires sacrifices that lesser beings cannot understand.
The condescension in his voice ignited something primal in my chest. 20 years of watching gods treat humans like livestock. 20 years of scraping survival from the wreckage of their conquest. 20 years of being dismissed as irrelevant by powers that could reshape reality on a whim. It all crystallized into rage that burned away fear. Lesser beings. The words tasted like poison on my tongue. Is that what you call the parents who watch their children waste away? The families who buried empty shells that should have been vibrant lives? I stepped forward, my hands clenched into fists that would have looked pathetic against their divine might. You want to punish me for saving lives while you play politics with suffering? Fine. But don't pretend your cosmic games matter more than the children who breathe because I acted. Silence stretched between us like a blade. Both gods studied me with expressions I couldn't read, while the Lycanthropes maintained their patient vigil around the settlement's perimeter. In the common hall behind me, hushed voices whispered prayers to deities who viewed them as acceptable losses in games beyond mortal comprehension. Kaelan moved first. This is how I die. His massive form blurred with speed that belonged to no mortal creature, divine power propelling him across the distance between us faster than thought. I had time for a single heartbeat of absolute terror as death approached in the form of scarred divinity and contained fury.
Territorial dispute, it is.
Theron's voice cut through the air like a blade, and suddenly the Stormbringer stood between me and annihilation. Lightning crackled around his frame as he faced the Worldbreaker, that cruel smile playing across his scarred features. With casual indifference, he slipped the golden apple back into some dimensional pocket within his armor. The two gods squared off in the settlement's center, divine power radiating from both in waves that made the air thick and charged. Frost began forming on nearby buildings despite the morning sun, while electrical discharge played between Theron's fingers like living things seeking targets. Kaelan's amber eyes blazed with fury that transcended mortal understanding.
Stand aside, Stormbringer. The mortal is mine by right of theft.
Is she?
Theron's lightning began building, divine electricity coiling around his form like serpents made of pure energy.
This territory falls within my patrol boundaries. These mortals accept my protection.
His silver eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction.
Unless you wish to challenge that claim directly?
The temperature plummeted as both gods prepared for war. Around the settlement's perimeter, the lycanthropes lowered into hunting crouches, while their pack leader faced off against elemental fury that could reshape the landscape with casual application of will.
This is how we all die, I thought, watching divine powers gather like storm fronts preparing to collide, caught between gods playing politics with human lives. But I was alive. For the moment, I was alive.
Chapter 5. When Gods Collide.
The battle between gods carved reality into fragments that refused to follow natural law. I pressed myself against the settlement's medical cabin, my body trembling as divine powers collided overhead with force that sent shockwaves through dimensions beyond the merely physical. Lightning met berserker rage in exchanges that rewrote the fundamental rules governing existence itself. The Worldbreaker moved like violence given form, his massive frame blurred between positions as he struck at Theron with precision that spoke of centuries spent perfecting divine warfare. Each blow carried enough force to level mountains, yet the Stormbringer deflected them with casual gestures that transformed kinetic energy into electrical discharge.
Thunder rolled across the settlement in patterns too complex for natural weather. Theron's laughter echoed through storm clouds that obeyed his will, silver hair whipping in winds that existed solely to frame his cruel amusement.
Still fighting like a mortal, Kaelan. All that time among the beasts has dulled your divine instincts.
The insult carried weight beyond words. I watched the Worldbreaker's scarred features darken with fury that made the air itself seem to recoil. When he responded, it was with violence that transcended anything I'd witnessed during the conquest. His fists struck empty air and somehow found purchase against forces that had no physical form.
Better to learn from honest predators than court favor with cosmic bureaucrats.
Kaelan snarled, his voice carrying harmonics that made the settlement's remaining windows vibrate dangerously.
At least wolves don't pretend their hunger serves higher purposes.
Around us, families huddled in whatever shelter they could find. The miraculously healed children clung to parents who whispered prayers to gods currently trying to annihilate each other above their heads. Tommy Crane's mother held him close, her face reflecting the terrible realization that salvation had purchased consequences beyond calculation. Divine blood painted the sky in abstract patterns as immortal flesh proved vulnerable to immortal weapons. Theron's storm-wreathed form bore fresh scars where the Worldbreaker's fists had found their mark, while Kaelan's armor showed stress fractures from lightning that carried the concentrated fury of tempests. This wasn't the casual destruction that had marked the initial conquest. This was personal. Decades or centuries of accumulated grievances being settled through violence that treated our settlement as mere collateral damage. Every blow exchanged reshaped the landscape around our community, turning familiar terrain into alien geometry that hurt to perceive directly.
Yield.
Kaelan commanded, his massive hands seizing Theron's throat with strength that could crush diamond.
These mortals are under my protection now. Their violation of my territory grants me jurisdiction over their fate.
Theron's response came as lightning channeled directly through his divine flesh. Electrical discharge that would have vaporized mountains flowed between the combatants, illuminating the destruction they'd wrought across our once peaceful community. When the brilliance faded, both gods stood separated by 20 feet of crater that glowed with residual energy.
Your protection?
Theron's silver eyes gleamed with malicious amusement.
Since when does the Worldbreaker concern himself with mortal welfare? Could it be that our notorious destroyer has developed sentiment?
The word fell between them like accusation of cosmic treason. In the divine hierarchy, emotional attachment to mortal beings was considered weakness that undermined rational authority. Sentiment led to compromise, and compromise threatened the careful balance that maintained order across multiple dimensions.
Kaelan's amber eyes flickered toward where I crouched against the medical cabin. Something passed across his scarred features too quickly for mortal perception to capture. Not acknowledgement exactly, but awareness that his motivations were being dissected by divine intelligence.
These thieves violated sacred boundaries.
he said finally, his voice carrying undertones of barely controlled violence.
Traditional law grants the offended party jurisdiction over appropriate punishment. I claim that right.
The formal language carried weight. Divine politics operated according to precedents established across cosmic ages, and territorial violation did indeed grant certain privileges to the offended deity. But Theron's laughter suggested he recognized loopholes that normal divine law might not acknowledge.
Traditional law assumes the offended party maintained proper security.
Theron countered, gesturing toward the settlement where stolen golden apples had worked miracles that shouldn't be possible.
Your precious garden seems remarkably accessible for something supposedly protected by divine authority.
The insult struck deeper than physical violence. I watched Kaelan's massive frame tense with fury that threatened to crack dimensional barriers. Whatever defenses protected his divine glade, they had proven inadequate against desperate mortals armed with nothing more dangerous than determination and botanical knowledge. Above us, something shifted in the spaces between storm clouds. Not weather patterns or divine manifestation, but geometry that folded reality until angles existed that violated every principle of physics and sanity. The sensation of being observed by powers beyond comprehension pressed down on the settlement like gathering avalanche. Watchers. Cosmic authorities whose attention meant that this conflict had escalated beyond a simple territorial dispute. I could feel their presence like weight against my consciousness. Eyes that reflected judgment beyond mortal and divine understanding, recording every detail for review by powers that treated gods like unruly children requiring supervision.
The realization struck both combatants simultaneously. Divine postures shifted from aggressive to wary, as immortal senses detected observation from sources that commanded respect, even from beings who could reshape continents. Whatever had been personal between Kaelan and Theron was about to become matter for cosmic review.
Well.
Theron murmured, his voice carrying undertones of anticipation mixed with carefully controlled concern.
Seems our little dispute has attracted attention from higher authorities. How unfortunate.
Kaelan's amber eyes tracked movement in dimensional spaces that hurt to perceive directly. His scarred features bore expressions suggesting calculations that involved powers and consequences beyond mortal comprehension.
This isn't over,
He said quietly.
Oh, but it is.
The new voice descended from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, carrying harmonics that rewrote local physics with each syllable.
The matter has been decided according to protocols established before your current incarnations drew breath.
Light descended that had nothing to do with natural law or divine manifestation. Pure radiance that seemed to exist in dimensions adjacent to normal space, revealing geometry that human minds weren't designed to process safely. 6 wings beat against existence itself, while hundreds of eyes reflected wisdom so terrible that direct observation threatened sanity. A Seraph. One of the cosmic powers that judged even gods themselves. When it spoke again, whispers bypassed human comprehension entirely and addressed divine consciousness through channels that operated beyond language. But the effect was immediate. Both combatants froze in recognition of authority that transcended their petty conflicts.
The message that passed between cosmic messenger and gods lasted no more than seconds in mortal time, but seemed to compress eternities of meaning into abbreviated exchange. I watched immortal beings who could reshape reality through will alone bow their heads in submission that spoke of hierarchies older than stars. Then the Seraph's attention turned toward me. The weight of cosmic regard pressed against consciousness, like the gravity of collapsing suns. Every thought, every motivation, every desperate choice that had led to this moment lay exposed to scrutiny that missed nothing and forgave less. I felt myself being catalogued, evaluated, reduced to data points and calculations that involved forces beyond my ability to influence. Whatever the Seraph's judgment, it involved purposes I couldn't fathom and consequences that would reshape existence. The six-winged messenger dissolved into ash that scattered on winds that obeyed different physical laws. But its pronouncement hung in the air like smoke from burned offerings. I watched both gods absorb its implications with expressions that mixed resignation with carefully controlled fury. Theron recovered first, his silver eyes bright with malicious satisfaction.
How delightfully final. I do hope you enjoy your new assignment, dear Kaelan. Try not to let sentiment interfere with cosmic duty.
His form dissolved into liquid lightning that flowed upward through storm clouds, departing with laughter that promised future encounters would carry even higher stakes.
That left only the Worldbreaker, standing amid the destruction with amber eyes that had fixed on me. The battle's aftermath painted our settlement in abstract patterns of divine violence. Craters where buildings had stood, twisted metal that had once been infrastructure, survivors who emerged from shelter with expressions suggesting they'd witnessed revelations too terrible for sanity. But the children lived. Tommy Crane helped his mother search through rubble for salvageable belongings, his movements quick and healthy, thanks to golden fruit that had cost more than any of us could have calculated. Marcus Webb and Annie Foster played games among the ruins, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the devastation surrounding our community.
You.
Kaelan said, his voice carrying undertones that made surviving glass rattle in window frames throughout the settlement.
You will serve at the sanctuary until further notice as hostage against further thefts.
The words fell like stones into still water, ripples of implication spreading through consciousness already strained beyond its normal limits. Not death, which would have been merciful. Not simple punishment, which would have had the virtue of finality. Hostage status implied ongoing value, purposes that extended beyond mere retribution for theft.
No explanation, no appeal, no escape, I whispered, the reality settling over me like burial shroud. Divine proclamation that brooked no resistance from mortals who dared disturb cosmic order through desperate attempts to save dying children.
Henrik stepped forward, his weathered face bright with desperate courage.
Take me instead. I led the expedition. I'm the one responsible for violating your territory.
Kaelan's amber gaze shifted toward the old man with attention that suggested he was cataloging potential threats to cosmic stability.
Your granddaughter lives because of the theft. That debt balances your transgression. But this one?
His massive finger pointed toward me with the weight of divine judgment.
This one serves purposes beyond simple punishment.
The distinction carried implications that chilled blood despite the settlement's unnatural warmth. Henrik's violation was personal, a grandfather seeking salvation for a dying child. Mine was something else entirely. I watched inhuman hands reach toward me with casual strength that could reshape continents, knowing that argument was not just futile, but potentially suicidal. The Seraph's judgment had been rendered, cosmic authority exercised through channels that reduced divine will to mere enforcement mechanisms. Please, I said, the word escaping before pride could contain it. Let me say goodbye.
Kaelan paused, his scarred features reflecting something that might have been recognition of mortal attachment to family bonds.
Quickly.
Father emerged from rubble that had once been our dwelling, his usually bleary eyes focused with desperate attention on his eldest daughter, about to be claimed by divine authority. No words passed between us. What could be said that would change anything? But his arms encircled me with strength I'd forgotten he possessed, and for a moment I was 5 years old again, safe in parental protection that could shield against any threat. Take care of them, I whispered against his shoulder. Jonas, Samuel, Lydia, make sure they remember why this mattered. His nod carried weight beyond simple agreement. Whatever weakness had claimed him since Mother's death, the current crisis had burned it away and revealed the man who'd once guided our family through impossible challenges.
We'll remember, and we'll be here when you come home.
The promise felt like a blessing in a situation that defied hope, but I held it close as divine hands lifted me with casual strength that made human weight meaningless. The settlement fell away beneath us, and I glimpsed families gathering around miraculously healed children who would grow up knowing their salvation had been purchased with my life. The golden apples had worked their miracle. Children lived who should have died. Families reunited who'd prepared for final farewells. But miracles extracted prices that compounded across dimensions, and I was about to discover what cosmic authority demanded from mortals who dared steal fire from gods. For now, they lived. In the mathematics of love measured against divine authority, that had to be enough.